The Unseen Hand of Eilean Mòr. The year is 1900. The place is Eilean Mòr, the largest and most forbidding of the Flannan Isles, a tiny, uninhabited archipelago 30 kilometers west of the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. It is a place of stark, primordial beauty, where the Atlantic swells crash against towering basalt cliffs, and the only persistent sound is the cry of seabirds and the ceaseless roar of the ocean. Perched atop the highest point of this desolate rock stood the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, a triumph of Victorian engineering completed only a year earlier in 1899. Its beam was a vital guide for the treacherous shipping lanes of the North Minch, a lifeline for vessels battling the notorious Atlantic Corner. The 3 men stationed there were seasoned keepers, trusted with the solemn duty of maintaining the light. Thomas Marshall, the first assistant, James Ducat, the second assistant, and Donald MacArthur, the occasional keeper. The principal keeper, Joseph Mòr, was ashore, awaiting his turn to rotate back in. The 3 men were professionals, bound by strict regulations and the unwritten code of the isolated lighthouse service. Their daily routine was a relentless mechanical cycle, trimming the wicks, refueling the lamp, polishing the lenses, winding the clockwork mechanism that kerned the great optic, and meticulously logging the weather and the vessel traffic. On Eilean Mòr, routine was survival. The first ominous signs. The first indication that something was terribly wrong arrived not from the island itself, but from the sea. On the evening of December 15th, 1900, the steamship Arctur, en route from Philadelphia to Leith, passed the Flannan Isles. The captain, an experienced mariner, noted in the log that the light was not burning. This was highly unusual, but in the chaos of a North Atlantic storm, it was initially dismissed as a temporary failure or an error of observation. For the next 10 days, the weather was brutally unforgiving, with gales and mountainous seas that made any attempt to land on Eilean Mòr impossible. The relief vessel, the Hesperus, which was due to collect the keepers and deliver Joseph Mòr for his shift, was repeatedly delayed. Finally, on December 26, 1900, Boxing Day, the Hesperus reached the island. The journey had been difficult, even for a sturdy relief tender. As they approached, Principal Keeper Joseph Mòr was the first to notice the eerie stillness. The flagmast was bare. No smoke rose from the chimney. There was no welcoming blast from the horn, and no keeper was waiting to meet them at the landing stage. A deep, unsettling silence hung over the island. Mòr fired a warning flare and repeatedly blew the Hesperus's whistle. No answer. Mòr, along with a small landing party, took the dinghy to the landing stage. The weather had calmed significantly, but the landing was still perilous. The minute Mòr set foot on the island, he was struck by a profound sense of wrongness. The gate to the stone steps leading up the cliff was securely bolted. Scaling the 160 steps to the lighthouse entrance, Mòr found the main door unlocked. This immediately broke one of the cardinal rules of the service. The main door was never to be left open, as the internal metal staircase acted as a funnel for the wind, creating an enormous draft that could blow out the light. Mòr stepped inside. The stillness was oppressive. His initial frantic search of the living quarters revealed a scene of impossible order mixed with shocking abandon. 1. The kitchen galley. Everything was neat. Pots and pans were hung up, the fire in the grate was cold, dead for days. 2. The mess room. On the table, he found a meal, half-eaten. A chair was overturned. This was the first sign of a possible hasty departure or interruption. 3. The keepers' beds. All 3 beds were neatly made, suggesting none of the men had retired for the night. 4. Personal gear. MacArthur's heavy oilskin-lined coat and boots were missing. Crucially, the other 2 men's oilskins, designed for the worst of the Hebridean weather, were still hanging on their hooks. Why would 2 men venture out into a potential storm without their storm gear? 5. The logbook. This was the most critical find, holding the key to the keeper's final hours. The keeper's last words, the chilling logbook entries. Mòr found the official logbook, meticulously kept until the 15th of December. The final entries painted a picture of worsening weather and extreme emotional distress, highly unusual for the stoic, professional lighthouse keepers. December 12th, Thomas Marshall, the first assistant, recorded gale, northerly, very heavy. He added a cryptic note, James Ducat, the second assistant, is very quiet. Donald MacArthur, the occasional, is crying. This was extraordinary. MacArthur was a seasoned sailor, known for his temper but never his nerves. And the keepers were forbidden from recording personal feelings or disputes in the official logbook. December 13th. The storm had intensified to a hurricane, Marshall wrote. Storm continued all day. The wind is the fiercest I have ever seen. Duquette and MacArthur still very quiet. Occasional praying. Again, the image of MacArthur, the tough occasional keeper, openly weeping and praying in the lighthouse, is deeply disturbing. December 15th, final entry. The most unsettling entry of all, Marshall recorded, storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. This was written in clear, normal handwriting, suggesting the keepers believed the threat was over. But it was just after this entry that the Arctar reported the light was out. The unanswerable questions. The landing parties searched every corner of the island. They found no sign of the men, but they did find 2 significant details. 1. The west landing stage. On the western side of the island, a small auxiliary landing stage was severely damaged. The iron railings were bent, and a large stone weighing over a ton had been displaced. This was clear evidence of an immense wave that must have crashed over the cliff. 2. The tins. In the gear shed, they found a collection of ropes neatly coiled. However, 2 full tins of oil used to lubricate the machinery were missing. After the initial search, Mòr was left alone on the island to tend the light until the official investigation could begin. The isolation, compounded by the chilling discovery, took a severe toll on him. He repeatedly fired flares and searched, hoping for a sign, and wrote in the log that he was experiencing strange feelings and horrible imaginations. The official inquiry and the theories. A formal investigation was launched by the Northern Lighthouse Board, NLB, led by Superintendent Robert Muirhead, who had personally hired all 3 men. He was on Eilean Mòr just weeks after the men vanished. Muirhead was a highly experienced and rational man. His final report, issued in January 1901, focused on the evidence of the severe storm damage. I believe the men were engulfed by a colossal wave. The wave must have been enormous, and I think one of them went down, and the other 2 went to his assistance and were swept away. Muirhead's theory was the most plausible, yet it left many questions unanswered. The locked gate. If a massive wave struck, why was the main entrance gate, a distance from the sea, found securely bolted on the outside? The oilskins. Why did Marshall and Duquette go out without their protective oilskins and boots? MacArthur's missing gear suggests he may have been the first to venture out. Why would the other 2 follow him into a life-threatening situation improperly dressed? The logbooks conflict. If the last entry on the 15th stated sea calm, what crisis occurred immediately afterwards that led to their disappearance? Muirhead hypothesized that the damage found at the West Landing Stage occurred before the 15th, and the men went down to check on it, underestimating the returning swell. The enduring alternative theories. Despite Muirhead's official conclusion, the unusual circumstances have fueled a century of speculation, making the Flannan Isles a truly astonishing real-life mystery for the UK audience. 1. The rogue wave and the rule breach. This is the most accepted theory. The keepers were experienced, but they might have committed an unforgivable breach of the rules. The storm on the 12th and 13th was apocalyptic. It's possible the damage to the landing stage occurred during this peak. MacArthur, known to be hot-tempered, and possibly depressed or disturbed as per the logbook, may have gone down on the 15th, after the calm entry, to secure loose equipment, perhaps the 2 missing oil tins. He took his gear. When he was caught by a massive freak wave, Marshall and Duquette ran out to save him without taking time to don their oilskins, thus sealing their fate. The overturned chair and the half-eaten meal suggest an extremely quick, panicked departure. 2. The internal dispute and murder. The logbook entries detailing the unusual, almost frightened behavior of MacArthur and the quiet Duquette have led to some to suggest a violent falling out. The isolation and pressure of a record-breaking storm could have led to what was called lighthouse syndrome. One keeper could have murdered the other 2, thrown their bodies into the sea, and then, overcome by guilt or fear, jumped in himself. The overturned chair supports a struggle, but the overall tidiness of the lighthouse contradicts a prolonged, violent fight. 3. The sea serpent or giant bird. In the absence of a logical answer, local folklore and sensationalist newspapers proposed far stranger possibilities. The sheer power required to bend the iron railings and shift a 1-ton stone was almost supernatural. Stories circulated of a massive sea serpent or a giant bird like a mythical rock attacking the tower. These theories are largely dismissed by investigators, but captured the profound awe and fear the ocean commands. 4. Foreign espionage or abduction. In the build-up to the Great War, some dark theories suggested the keepers were abducted by a foreign spy vessel, perhaps German, seeking to disrupt the shipping lanes or gather intelligence. This seems improbable given the harsh conditions and the lack of a suitable landing spot for a covert operation. No bodies of the 3 keepers, James Duquette, Thomas Marshall, or Donald MacArthur, were ever recovered. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was remanned immediately, but the mystery cast a permanent shadow over the structure. Keepers who served there in the subsequent years reported strange whispers on the wind, voices calling out the names of the missing men. The enduring fascination of the Flannan Isles lies in its stark simplicity. 3 men, an island, a light, and a violent, incomprehensible end. It is a true story that sits at the intersection of fact and folklore, a brutal reminder that even the strongest Victorian engineering is ultimately a fragile defiance against the sheer, untamed power of the North Atlantic. It serves as a hauntingly beautiful, terrifying cautionary tale, etched into the collective memory of Scotland and the global maritime world. The ocean, it seems, always claims what is its own.